We want to take you now to the White House, where National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications John Kirby is speaking at the press briefing. Let's listen.
We successfully secured the release of 2 Americans that had been taken hostage by Hamas during the horrific terrorist assault on the 7th of October. And the president had a chance to speak with them and with their families. As he told other families that he met in Tel Aviv, family members of others who have been taken hostage. We have no higher priority than the safety of Americans that are being held around the world, and we're going to continue around the clock to see if we can get them home with their families where they belong. It is literally an hour-by-hour effort here at the White House and at the State Department to find out where these folks are and to try to make the effort to get them out and get them back. As Karine just spoke about, of course, first convoys over the weekend of humanitarian assistance across that border and was able to reach Palestinians in need. And as she also said, we're going to continue those efforts going forward. It's important that the aid be sustainable, and that's what we're focused on. And of course, throughout the weekend, the president received briefings from his national security team on all the latest developments. And yesterday, as you know, he convened calls with Prime Minister Netanyahu, His Holiness, Pope Francis, and then, of course, with the leaders of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom. I'm sure you all saw the joint statement from all those leaders that they released last night. I won't reiterate it, but you can hopefully take away from that a real clear consistency and unanimity for Israel's right to defend itself against terrorism, while, of course, adhering to international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians. Now, we've also seen over the course of the last few days, actually the course of the last week, but certainly over the last couple of days of the weekend, an uptick in rocket and drone attacks by Iranian-backed proxy groups against military bases housing U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria. And we're deeply concerned about the potential for any significant escalation of these attacks in the days ahead. At the direction of President Biden, the Secretary of Defense has ordered the military to take steps to prepare for this, to ensure that we're postured appropriately, both in terms of being able to defend our forces and respond decisively as needed. Secretary of Defense has directed 2 carrier strike groups to the region, and we are now sending more air defenses to U.S. air bases in the region. Now, we know these groups are supported by the IRGC and the regime. We know Iran continues to support Hamas and Hezbollah. And we know that Iran is closely monitoring these events, and in some cases actively facilitating these attacks and spurring on others who may want to exploit the conflict for their own good or for that of Iran. We know Iran's goal is to maintain some level of deniability here, but we're not going to allow them to do that. We also are not going to allow any threat to our interest in the region to go unchallenged. We demonstrated last week that we have and will use the military capables available to us to protect and defend those interests. And those capabilities are getting bigger and better every day. As President Biden has said, our message to any hostile actor seeking to escalate or widen this conflict is very simple. Don't do it. With that, take some questions.
John, is it your view that the Israelis should begin their Gaza offensive whenever they feel ready?
It's our view that the Israeli Defense Forces, Steve, need to decide for themselves how they're going to conduct operations. We're not in the business of dictating terms to them, and we're certainly not going to be in the business here from the White House of previewing any future operations one way or the other. That would be inappropriate.
And secondly, you said that Iran is actively facilitating these attacks. What are you seeing? What exactly are they doing?
Oh, their support for these Iran-backed proxies is no secret. It's pretty open, and they've made no secret of it. Funding, resourcing in terms of providing the rockets and the munitions that they fire, training for some of these guys. I mean, there is a connection between these groups and the IRGC, a very direct connection.
Go ahead, MJ. We have reported that the administration has been urging Israel to delay a ground invasion. Can you tell us whether other countries are making the same request? Is there a coordinated effort on that front?
MJ, I won't speak for other nations and what communications they might be having with Israel. I can tell you we have, since the beginning of the conflict, in the early hours, maintained a level of communication with our Israeli counterparts to ascertain their intentions, their strategy, their aims, to see what their answers are to the kinds of tough questions that any military ought to be asking before you launch any kind of a major operation. Have you thought through the branches? Have you thought through the sequels? Have you thought through the unintended consequences? And so we are in active conversation with them about that.
And John, we've seen a number of leaders travel to Israel or commit to traveling to Israel, of course, the president himself. Is it your understanding that there would not be a ground invasion as long as there's a head of state in the country?
That is a question for Israeli officials to speak to, MJ. Again, I just don't want to be in the position where I am speaking for the Israeli Defense Forces.
And just another quick topic. Why is it that people currently are not able to leave Gaza right now? Do you have sort of an explanation as to why that humanitarian corridor for people to exit Gaza, why that isn't open? Is the obstacle Hamas? Is it the Egyptians?
I think there's a lot of factors going into why there's no exit out. We're glad that stuff's going in, as Karine briefed y'all, but we still want to see safe passage out, and particularly for the several hundred American citizens that we know are in Gaza and want to leave. And Ambassador Satterfield is on the ground working this very, very hard. But there's a number of factors, and I think security, certainly Egyptian officials have spoken to this. I mean, there's they've got legitimate security concerns, and again, we just need to work through that.
Admiral, can you tell us the latest on the status of hostages and the work to try to release additional hostages? Do you see a category of those being held who might be sort of the next available to be released if that were to take place? Can you give us a sense of what that picture looks like?
I wish I could, Kelly. I really do. And these are all great questions, but unfortunately where we are right now in the process makes it impossible for us to publicly detail the efforts that are going on. We are grateful for all the help we got, and we got help getting those two Americans out, the mother and daughter, and we're glad that they're okay and they're going to be reunited with the families and come back home. But there's a bunch of others that aren't. Now, a small group we still think are Americans, and then there are dozens and dozens from other countries, and obviously Israel as well. And there's just a lot of effort going on, a lot of conversations and discussions with partners in the region, and I think it's just best if we don't detail that.
Do we have more specificity on the number of Americans? It's floated from a handful to as many as 10. Anything more on that?
I want to be careful here because the numbers, as you rightly said, have fluctuated since the last time I talked to you. Certainly now we're glad to know that the number is down by 2, obviously. But we still have about 10 unaccounted for Americans, and it's not exactly clear to us where those 10 people are. So I would still categorize it as about a handful. And I know that's not the specificity you want, but that's really as detailed as I think I should get today.
One last issue. There's a dual national from Maryland, young man who went to serve in the IDF, who was killed in action. Can you speak to that situation, if the president has reached the family or has any intention to do that? Any particulars there?
Well, we certainly offer our deepest condolences to the family. That's news no mom and dad ever want to get. I don't have any communication to speak to one way or the other, but again, our thoughts and prayers go to the family, sure.
John, on a post-Hamas Gaza, if that were to happen, is there anything that you can share on what conversations the U.S. is having on what that post-Hamas Gaza would look like and who would run things?
Really, that's going to be a conversation that Israeli officials, need to start having amongst themselves. And I think, again, without speaking for them, I don't think I'm going too far to say that the focus right now is on going after Hamas, where they are in Gaza, getting humanitarian assistance in, getting people out. That's where our focus is, and I know the focus of our Israeli counterparts is certainly on prosecuting these operations against Hamas. I think the issue of governance in Gaza certainly is not unimportant, but I wouldn't speak for the Israelis in terms of how deeply they're diving down into what that needs to look like.
The U.S. is helping with that conversation, please?
We have talked to the Israelis again about their aims and strategy, and that includes some of the long-term issues that are out ahead of them. But I think you can understand appropriately right now that the focus is on the operational picture.
On the normalization process, can you say if Saudi Arabia has provided a list of requests for what it would like to see for those talks to start again between Saudi Arabia and Israel?
I'm not tracking or aware of a specific threat. Now, you're talking post-October 7th. I'm not aware of some sort of new list or homework assignment that they've submitted. We still believe that those talks are important. We still want to pursue normalization. We understand that both in Israel and, of course, in Riyadh, there's a different focus right now. We get that. But we still believe there's great value in pursuing normalization, and we have every intention of keeping that going.
Thank you, Admiral. What kinds of humanitarian aid would the U.S. like to see reaching the Palestinians before Israel launches a ground invasion?
Can I bifurcate that question? Because I'm not going to sit here and assume that there's going to be some sort of a ground invasion, and I'm certainly not going to speak to hypothetical timing if there's going to be. Let's just talk about humanitarian assistance writ large. And you heard Karine, we are getting food, water, medicine to Gaza, not enough. I mean, there's been, I think, 3 convoys, some little less than 60 trucks. That's a good start, but it is just a start. We want to see it keep going. And I think over coming days, you're going to continue to see convoys of trucks getting in. But it's also, fuel is also an issue. We know you need fuel to run power generators in hospitals. You need fuel to run the pumps in the desalination facilities so that people can drink fresh, healthy water. So fuel is another thing that we're working on.
Whether or not there is a ground invasion, do you view humanitarian aid getting there first as important?
Whether or not there's a ground invasion, we believe that humanitarian assistance flowing to the people of Gaza is critically important, and it needs to go as soon as possible and as much as possible.
And where does the president stand on this? Because there was some confusion over the weekend about whether or not he had said that, yes, he does want Israel to wait until humanitarian assistance can get to the Palestinians before any invasion.
We have been crystal clear with our partners in the region, including Israel, that we want to see humanitarian assistance flow. There's been no change to our posture on that at all. But as I said, I think to Steve's question, we're not dictating military terms to the Israeli Defense Forces. They have a right and a responsibility to go after these terrorists, and they certainly are going to do it in a way that they choose to, that they believe is appropriate to the threat. We're definitely going to support them in terms of providing the capabilities for them to continue to prosecute Hamas terrorists. In fact, security assistance has continued to flow over the course of the weekend, and it will. But we're not dictating terms to them.
Thank you. So the UN Secretary General, the European Union Foreign Policy Chief, and several international leaders are calling for a humanitarian ceasefire. Will we see the United States calling for a humanitarian pause?
What we want right now is make sure Israel has the tools it needs to defend itself and to go after Hamas, and that humanitarian assistance keeps flowing. Now, it's started, and it's a good thing. We want to keep it going and keep it sustainable. That's what we're focused on.
Sorry, you mentioned this joint statement yesterday where President Biden and several Western allies asked Israel to protect civilians. But the death toll in Gaza is rising sharply. Does it look to you that Israel is abiding by international law? Are they listening to your advice?
We're not going to parcel out each and every event that happens on the battlefield, especially since we're not there. I can just tell you that there hasn't been a conversation that we've had with Israeli counterparts, and we've had them at all levels, where we aren't talking about not just what they want to do, but how they want to do it.
John, 2 Fridays ago, I reported that the U.S. was urging Israel to delay a ground invasion. The day after, the officials here issued statements to other outlets denying that was the case. In the days, week plus since, other outlets have started to report the same information that I had, but today you're not confirming any of those reports. My question is, aren't you at all concerned that if the U.S. is not clear with the public about what we are asking or suggesting to Israel that they do here, that that's going to complicate getting this aid package through Congress? I mean, you guys are asking for more than $105 billion, which a portion of this goes toward Israel. Are you concerned that not being clear with folks about what the U.S. is advising Israel to do will hamper support in Congress for this aid?
We've been very clear and consistent about our support for Israel. in their ability to defend themselves. Jackie, we've been very clear and consistent about the fact that we're going to keep providing security assistance so that they can do that. We've been clear and consistent about the need for humanitarian assistance to flow, and clear and consistent about our desire to get people out of Gaza as well as to get our hostages home. I think we've been very clear and consistent throughout, and that includes with members of Congress. And yes, we are going to need congressional support to continue to support Israel. We've got enough appropriations available to us for a while longer. Well, how long is that while is going to depend on the expenditure rate and the kinds of operations that they're conducting. So we desperately need Congress to act on this supplemental request.
Well, you said you've been asking tough questions of the Israelis about their strategy here. Are you liking the answers that they're giving you?
No, I'm not going to talk about the details of the conversations that we're having. Again, these have been clear and consistent conversations. Again, making sure that they have what they need, and that they are thinking through. That we are asking them what their answers are to the kinds of questions that any military ought to be asking itself as it conducts operations.
But on the aid portion, how, for instance, are you going to convince people that this is not going to get into Hamas's hands when, for instance, we saw fraud with something like COVID relief money in the U.S. And we're now talking about securing an understanding with Hamas, a terror group, about how this humanitarian aid should be used. I mean, how can you convince people that that is going to be a worthwhile, necessary, and secure endeavor?
We certainly share concerns about any diversion of humanitarian assistance for Hamas purposes. I mean, for instance, fuel's a good example. We know that they need fuel to be able to electrify and to power up their tunnels, for instance, keep the lights on. So we understand that. We're not blind to the potential concerns here over diversion, which is why Ambassador Satterfield is on the ground. His whole purpose is to make sure that humanitarian assistance can get to the Palestinian people. We have seen no indications as of today that any of the trucks that Karine talked about, any of the material in those trucks, have been diverted to Hamas or been absconded by Hamas. That, in fact, every indication that we have is that it has, in fact, gone to the Palestinian people who are in desperate need for it. I would remind folks that we have trusted partners on the ground, humanitarian aid organizations, and of course the UN Relief Agency is on the ground, and they very much are taking a personal stake, a professional personal stake, in making sure that aid is getting where it's needed. We're going to watch it. Obviously, we're going to watch this closely. We don't want to see Hamas benefit any more than anybody else does.
Just following on that, how does the U.S. go about knowing that it is getting to who it's supposed, the aid is getting to who it's supposed to get to, and not Hamas isn't taking a bid off the top? And then second, could you confirm that the president has sent Lieutenant General James Glynn and some other folks to advise the Israelis?
So on your first question, Amr, in fact, I'm going to write these down because I'm going to probably forget. But on your first question, as I said, we're working with trusted partners on the ground, including the UN. And that's the way we do it in so many countries around the world, where we don't have a footprint. We don't have or any regions of the world, where we don't have a footprint. I mean, we're not on the ground to personally inspect these things, but we do have trusted partners on the ground, including the UN and some of these aid organizations, who will report what they're seeing and where they're taking this material and who's getting it. So we'll stay in close touch with them, and we all share the same desire that Hamas not be able to divert any of this stuff for their own purposes. We all share that desire. And it's not just the United States. You said, how's the United States going to monitor? The whole international community has a stake here in making sure that the people of Gaza get this food, water, medicine, and other vital needs met. On your second question, what I can tell you is that that there are a few relevant military officers with experience, the kinds of experience that we believe is appropriate to the sorts of operations that Israel is conducting and may conduct in the future, to go over there to share some perspectives from their own experience and to ask the hard questions, the same hard questions that we've been asking of our Israeli counterparts since the beginning.
Can you say how many?
A few.
You have been listening to National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, speak at the daily White House press briefing. He reiterated that the White House has no higher priority than releasing American hostages held overseas, and that the number of Americans being held in the region is at about 10 this time. That's the number of Americans unaccounted for. Kirby says there has been an uptick of Iranian attacks on U.S. positions in the Middle East. He also says the U.S. will not dictate whether or not ground forces from the IDF invade Gaza.